So what is the abortion debate really about? Is it about men who are imposing their will on women's bodies? Is it about saving children? Is it just a bunch of religious fanatics? Or is it just a bunch of feminist fear? I'd like to suggest, for the vast majority, it's about suffering. When it comes to pregnant women, there are too many circumstances to name without doing a 57-part video. But I'll touch on a few of them eventually. But for now, let's all agree that no one considers an abortion for fun. Every woman who considers one does so because she's found herself in a position she doesn't want to be in. You might not believe me, but the Catholic Church is concerned for and desperately wants to help you, your mother, your sister, your daughter, girlfriend, fiance, wife, friend, coworker, classmate, whoever it is who's found themselves in this position. We just want them to choose life. And not just for the child, but for them as well. A life that creates beauty from ashes, miracles from mistakes, and even love from hate. And don't believe the lie that we only care about them when they give birth, and then we forget about the kid. Because we've worked tirelessly to help them, serve them, and support them by founding Catholic hospitals, rehab centers, adoption agencies, food pantries, women's shelters, and many of us have even become adoptive parents like my wife and I. Georgiana Madeline Jane is the light of our lives. But we support these women in their efforts to elicit appropriate financial support and prosecute evil perpetrators. We offer healing ministries for those who've had abortions, and Catholics are readily forgiven for their role in past abortions, as with any sin, through the sacrament of reconciliation. In short, we look to protect daughters of God physically, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. But I'd ask that you try and understand that the same drive to protect you extends to your daughters and sons, because the Catholic Church does not value one life over another. We are all children of God, equally adopted by God as his children. Now, Phoebe Bridger, a singer from Los Angeles, recently went public with her past abortion, and she said, and I quote, "I don't think about it as a baby, of course not." Another celebrity singer, Amanda Shires, described her abortion as having, quote, "cells removed, nothing more." Well, let's talk about those cells, what so many don't want to think about as a baby. I believe in DNA. I believe it's a real thing, and my guess is you do too. And those cells growing, they have DNA. They have genetic code. And that genetic code reveals that they're not only human, but a unique human. Molecular biologist Tara Sander-Lee reminds us that at the moment of conception, gender, hair color, eye color, and so much more is determined, unique even from the woman carrying them. So we've got living, human, unique. This is not disputed. But some still insist we don't know when life begins. Clearly, this is false. But even if it were true, she says it would be an argument against abortion, not for it. She loves to use the analogy of a hunter separated from his friend, who later sees a bush that's shaking. He's got his gun out. Is it a deer? Is it his friend? Well, you would not shoot if you weren't sure. Now, the standard medical text, Human Embryology and Teratology, says clearly, although human life is a continuous process, fertilization, also called conception, is a critical landmark because under ordinary circumstances, a new genetically distinct human organism is thereby formed. Page 8. Even David Bonine, author of A Defense of Abortion, probably not a book you would expect me to be quoting, writes on page 20, quote, "A human fetus is, after all, simply a human being at a very early stage in his or her development." Okay, fine. But maybe it's all right to have an abortion up until viability. Fancy word meaning until it can survive on its own. But can we agree that every year technology advances, and in the 10 years ago, there are some unborn children who wouldn't have made it, who would make it today. So are you honestly trying to tell me that technology determines humanity? If the technology is good enough, well, I guess they're human. We know that's not true. Furthermore, it's not just the unborn children who are dependent on others. Some elderly, those with disabilities, and even healthy infants are dependent on others. Back in the 13th century, the German king, Frederick II, was kind of a warped dude. He conducted a horrible experiment intended to discover what language children would naturally grow up to speak if never spoken to, because he thought it would be German. Well, King Frederick took babies from their mothers at birth and placed them in the care of nurses who were forbidden to speak in their hearing. A second rule was imposed as well. They weren't even allowed to touch them. To his great dismay, Frederick's experiment was cut short, but not before something tragically significant regarding human nature was revealed. As many of you might have already guessed, the babies grew up to speak no language at all. But it was because they all died. In the year 1248, an Italian historian, whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce, recorded with a little bit of a scientific flair, they could not live without petting. The babies literally died for want of touch. Should infants be eligible for termination because they can't survive on their own? Should those with severe disabilities, or even the elderly, who can no longer survive on their own, join the list? And ultimately, let me put this as plainly as possible. This is what the church teaches. The weakness and dependence of children is the reason to give them more care and support, not less. Because dependency does not eliminate humanity. I mean, heck, I've got a severe back injury, and my life is enriched by my dependence on my wife, my friends, my community, and God. Okay, fine. You know, I'm hearing you, David, but there's so many other issues, right? Well, okay. Let's talk about it outside of the religious context entirely and talk about the government. 2/3 of the states in our country have laws that punish the killing of the unborn without the mother's consent. Usually it involves taking the mother's life as well, but an additional penalty is added when that unborn child is killed. But surely the mother's feelings about whether or not that's a child don't have the power to determine if a growing human should be protected or not. That would make sense. Feelings. When one person's feelings determine the humanity of another, we end up going down a road that leads to women's oppression, slavery, and Holocaust. And by the way, my human value does not increase with size, or I'd be considerably of more worth than when COVID began. It doesn't increase with mental capacity, or I'd be worth more than my daughter, and I'd be worth less than a lot of my friends. My value doesn't increase in tandem with how much I'd suffer if I were killed, because if that's the case, I'd never go to sleep again out of fear of somebody deciding I'm not worth very much while I'm sleeping. My value does not increase based on who my parent is. Stephanie Reynolds makes it difficult to approve of abortion, even in the case of rape. Her own mother was a victim of rape, and she openly wonders why an innocent child would be punished more severely than the rapist. Why she would have faced the death penalty, but not the perpetrator. She also points out that no act of violence against her would have helped her mother forget the original act of violence, because you'd never forget rape. In the end, abortion doesn't fix anything. It ends someone. It doesn't fix rape, because you don't forget rape. You also don't forget abortion. I've never heard someone respond to the question, have you received an abortion, with, I don't remember. Doesn't matter what you do, you never forget. Did you know that the original Hippocratic Oath even understood that abortion doesn't fix anything? it ends someone. It included the line, "I will give no sort of medicine to any pregnant woman with a view to destroy the child." Strong, no-nonsense words. And I know there are still a few of you who are angry because you still believe the church's teaching is placing the life of the child above the life of the mother. And this is not true. We hold them in equal regard. I started off saying that, and I hold to it. The Catholic Church sees every child of God as equals. I would encourage you to study up on the concept of double effect. It's probably going to take you several pages, but the short version is this. If a medical procedure is done to save both the life of the mother and the child tragically dies as a result, despite every effort to save both, that's not an abortion. It is a preterm delivery. This is the teaching of our faith. But I know, David, this is all really difficult stuff. This is not easy, and I agree. And that's what brings us back to suffering. Suffering is something we will all endure in different ways and to different degrees in this life. It is impossible to avoid as much as we try or as much as our parents try to do it for us. This can be especially true when it comes to abortion. But let me repeat it, abortion doesn't fix anything, it ends someone. Recording artist Nicki Minaj opened up about her abortion when speaking with Rolling Stone. She said, and I quote, "I thought I was going to die. I was a teenager, and it was the hardest thing I've ever gone through." She went on to say, "The abortion has haunted me all my life." But she stands behind her decision saying, "It'd be contradictory if I said I wasn't pro-choice. I didn't have anything to offer a child." But here's the thing. Miss Minaj knows better. She knows she could have given her child life. And I've got proof that she herself wrote. In the third verse of her song Autobiography, she wrote the following words. "Please, baby, forgive me. Mommy was too young. Mommy was too busy trying to have fun. Now I don't pat myself on the back for sending you back, because God knows I was better than that. Listen to people who told me I wasn't ready for you, but how the expletive would they know what I was ready to do?" Nicki knows abortion doesn't fix anything. It ends someone. And of course, it's natural. I get it. It's natural to want to avoid suffering for ourselves and even more so for those we love. Ask any parent. Heck, ask me. I don't want Georgiana to suffer. I don't want her to feel pain, have that innocence taken away from her. She's still so young that I still see it there. I'd be so mad if, and I will be so mad when that happens, because it's going to happen, because it happens in this life. But despite my instinct to keep her from any suffering, really what I know I need to do is to be there for her when it happens, like any good parent. To be there when she comes back, to comfort and to walk through it. The Catholic Church is much like that. It's not good at helping people avoid suffering. The Catholic Church excels at walking with people in their suffering, through their suffering. And it's because we know that suffering is a part, and often a crucial part, of the human experience. Ironically, it reminds us of our dependence on God. It challenges us to live for things and people other than ourselves, outside of ourselves, unselfishly. The Catechism of the Catholic Church reminds us in paragraph 1506 that, quote, "Christ invites his disciples to follow him by taking up their crosses in their turn." And bringing it back to abortion one last time, the Church doesn't only invite you to healing, forgiveness, and life. It invites you to purpose. Pope St. John Paul II pointed out that past experience with abortion and the ability to repent and trust in God can make one, quote, "among the most eloquent defenders of everyone's right to life." May God bless you. May God bless all of us.